Hi, welcome to part 2 of the Forbidden Donut tutorial series. Today we're going to work on texturing the model that we made last time in the modeling portion. So we're going to be playing with a lot of colors and lights and stuff, so what I want to do first is get rid of this gray back here because that's not going to play well with the colors we want to use, and it's generally just, it doesn't look very good in a render. And the way that you change that is you're going to come over here down to your world properties in the inspector tab. You're going to click color, and you're going to drag this slider to darken that up a little bit. You could go all the way down to black, but I find it kind of hard to pick certain details out when you do that, so I just like to go a little bit above, like this, because you still want some of that white light coming in to kind of highlight what we're going to be doing here, especially because this is a metallic texture, and those really look best when they have a little bit of white light to hit them and make them look interesting. So next we want to work on our lights. So up here in the outliner, let's select our point light that our scene comes with, or you can just select it right here. And I want to pull that closer to this down here. And of course that makes the light way too intense. So actually what I'm going to do is turn the power down, because the power starts at 1000 for me in Eevee. So I'm going to take that down to about 200, and that creates softer light. And then we actually want to change the color on this. So pick a color that you like, because what's going to happen is we're going to click here, hit Shift D, and bring a light to the other side as well, and just move it so that it's fully lit like this. And we're going to pick, just real quick to show you, you can hit this color right here and then use this whole color wheel, make it darker or brighter. I like it all the way bright for this specific example, and just pick two colors like this. So on that light we picked a soft pink, and you see it hits and kind of plays with the white light coming from here, but we really want it mingling with another color, because then it creates this really cool effect without us having to do any texturing at all. It's just lights hitting this, and we are going to play with its texture in a little bit, but the color I would like to come from these lights, because I think it's a quick, good method to get cool renders. And actually, I was playing a bit ago, and I like these colors like this. I think this looks very nice. So now what we want to do is come up here and click on our shading tab so that we can mess with textures. And when you open up your shading tab, you're going to see your usual outliner and inspector. There's a viewport up here, and the important part is the node editor down here. And we also have an image viewer here, and you can see some of your files here. And what we're going to do is first add a material. And what a material is it has a shader component and this material output that the shader gives its data to. So the material output is what you see up here, and the shader is what is manipulating all of these variables and all the variables you can put into it to create what is up here. So where we have things like our metallic value, specular, how rough it is, you know, and you won't be able to see much of that right now until we turn the metallic up. What we're going to do, because we know we do want a metallic material, is turn this metallic up quite high. I like 0.9-ish for this, and you'll see it gets this cool kind of look to it. And we're going to take our roughness and we're going to pull it a little bit down, because if we pull it too far down then we get something weird. We want to take our roughness and pull it down a little bit so that it's more like glass, it's more reflective, and everything else for this render should be fine. But you can play with all these variables all you want. It's a good idea to get familiar with this specific principled BSDF shader, because it is a universal shader that you can use to make all kinds of materials in Blender. It's super useful. Now we could go ahead and play with the color value right here, but actually I want to start by playing with the normal value down here, because that's going to allow us to give it bump, which creates, it looks a little more realistic and interesting, and it adds lots of detail. So we're going to come up here to add, or hit Shift A, and then search for a bump node. And a bump node it takes in these four values. It takes in a strength, a distance, a height, and a normal value, and it outputs a normal value. And you'll see if you link these up like this, you just hold left click and drag. And if you link the normal to normal, not much is going to happen, but that's because the bump doesn't have any height data to work with. So what we're going to do is hit Shift A again, and we're going to use a texture as a height value, and I'm going to pick, and you can play with this, but I'm going to pick a brick texture, and I'm going to drag the color and use it as the height map. And you'll see that puts bricks on our design here, and we don't really want bricks specifically. You'll see the brick width and height value down here. I was thinking more like little embedded squares, like an emboss on metal would look kind of cool, sort of sci-fi. So I'm going to, you'll see the brick width is at 0.5 and the row height, or the brick height, is at 0.25. So let's just make those the same, and we'll make them both 0.5. And then we get squares like this. And what we can do is then drag the scale of the texture up. And what that's going to do is it's going to show more of the texture, which means these are going to get smaller. And we're going to scale this up. I know it's counterintuitive, scaling it up makes the bricks smaller, but it's because it's looking at a bigger texture and it gets more squares to work with to project onto this. So we're going to take that scale and drag it up. And you'll see some of these are perfect squares, but of course right here, these are still bricks, rectangles, and these are just stretched strangely. And that's because we are, this isn't mapped at all. It's just applying this material kind of willy-nilly all over this thing. So what we want to do is click on this, hit Tab to go into edit mode, and make sure it's all selected with A, and hit U to unwrap it. And then it is unwrapped, so it has textures we can write to, but you see it still doesn't look right. So the reason for that is it's not actually being mapped down here, even though it has something to map to. And to map textures, it needs to take in this vector value. And the way that we can do that is with a mapping node. So we can Shift A for our mapping node, like this, and we can drag vector to vector. And you'll see that just creates problems, and that's because the mapping node itself takes in a vector right here. So what we're going to do is we need one more node, and that's going to be a texture coordinate. And if you have Node Wrangler enabled, you can just click this and hit Control T, and it will add all this for you. And if you do that, then by default it will set generated, but we don't like that because it looks weird. So that's good if you're just kind of mocking it up and you want to play with how the values look. But for once we have it unwrapped, we want to use the UV. So we're going to drag the UV texture coordinates, this vector value, into this vector value. And just like that, our squares get a lot more normalized and they look correct everywhere. Although I am going to make them smaller by increasing the scale right here. And that looks really neat. So we have now this kind of, and actually it looks kind of bad to me because they're so perfect and they don't look real. And the reason for that is you never want to have a full strength on your bump. You want to bring this down at least a little bit, but I'm going to bring it all the way down, you see, down here, and make them very faint, because then it gives this kind of cool like alien space metal, like it's this embossed metal, and we're going to add a couple more effects, but for now this looks pretty decent. So next we're going to play with our color.